Fala galera do Flow Games, Mika aqui, prazer enorme estar conversando com vocês, você que está ouvindo, que está assistindo a live, que está de alguma forma acompanhando a gente nesse Flow Games News do dia 26 de janeiro de 2024. Infelizmente, pessoal, não pude estar aí com vocês hoje, pessoal aí da bancada também, todo mundo da produção, mas galera, é o seguinte, eu tô aqui para compartilhar uma oportunidade muito bacana que chegou pra gente pelo time do Xbox Brasil. Obrigado, time do Xbox Brasil, por essa oportunidade de conversar, galera, com os desenvolvedores do Avowed. Na verdade, duas pessoas bem importantes do desenvolvimento. A diretora do jogo, a Carrie Patel, e o diretor de gameplay do jogo, que é o Gabe Paramo. Ambos estiveram aí no Xbox Developer Direct, que nós cobrimos juntos, né, pessoal? Foi muito bacana. Eles que apareceram ali no vídeo, falaram sobre o Avowed, e eu pude conversar com eles, perguntei bastante coisa, falamos sobre narrativa, sobre inspirações, né? Muita gente fala de Skyrim aqui, Skyrim ali, enfim, tem muita coisa legal nesse papo. Falamos sobre gameplay, sobre a estrutura de missões, sobre as atividades secundárias que o jogo vai ter, a estrutura do mundo, do espaço aberto que o jogo vai oferecer. Tem muita informação legal nessa entrevista, então na sequência aqui, fica aí com esse papo que é bem legal. Obrigado, galera, grande abraço. Hi guys, it's great to have you here with me. I'm Bruno from Flow Games in Brazil. I'm here. First of all, thank you for being here, and how are you guys doing?
Thanks for having us. It's a great day, and we're excited to finally get to share more about the project with everybody.
Yep, super excited. Thank you for having us, and hi to all your viewers.
Let's get one of the big questions, talking about Avowed and everything we saw at Developer Direct with, great presentation from the game. Let's get one of the big questions out of the box right away. What can you tell us about the structure of Avowed in terms of being, open world or semi-open space with guided missions like Outer Worlds, for example? What can you guys share with us in this matter?
So it's definitely an open zone game in a similar vein to the Outer Worlds, as you mentioned, that lets us build, a variety of different regions, each with their own aesthetic and story and, set of quests and discoverable content, and kind of spread them out throughout the living lands and give the players a really unique experience in each one of them.
In terms of, region, you've got the gameplay that's sort of tied to the region, and, the players can explore as much as they want. Maybe they don't want to do the crypt path stuff, and maybe they want to kind of explore some side quests, find some things, and before they decide to move on to the next, region, essentially.
You just talked about the side quests, so that's a great one for us to dive in a little bit more, if you can, of course. So we can think, about Pillars of Eternity structure or Outer Worlds structure, which are games that you have an expertise, of course. So what could you explain to us about the side activities, / missions in Living Lands? What will they offer to players?
So they're going to offer a variety of gameplay hooks, which, Gabe can certainly talk more about. But, quests for us at Obsidian are, the primary building block for, the player experience in our games. It's how you get to know the characters, how you get to, experience and participate in the conflicts of the world, and also just how you start to develop and define, your idea of who you are in this world, who your player character is, what kind of person you are. And so we really look at quests as, both a hook to get players into, the really fun elements of exploration and combat and discovery, and as a means to kind of tease the player through the world and encourage them to discover more. But it's also really how they get to say who they are and set themselves up in relation to other characters.
Yeah, in terms of the gameplay, right? Like the world is sort of there to bring the players to discover all the different kind of gameplays, which I would bucket under, right? Like conversations, combat, and exploration, right? So being presented with, I have to swim under this thing, being presented with, do I have enough air to make it through this, right? And maybe find an item, right? Or here's a quest that presents me with some combat, or I discovered a certain scenario where maybe I can talk my way out of it, right? Those are kind of some of the gameplay experiences that the players will be able to discover as they explore the world.
Oh, guys, you are great in reading my questions before I ask them. What's happening here? So just, Gabe, you just touched in a point which I think is very relevant for players to know about the gameplay. So we have like fantasy, open world, or an open space first-person perspective. Those are very popular pillars in this genre, all right? With great games out there, not only for their audience, but with newcomers as well. So what Avowed, in your vision, what Avowed brings to the table to shake this a little bit?
From the gameplay standpoint, definitely we want to empower the player with their choice, right? Have consequences, right? What is based off the loadout the weapons they're holding, the loadout that their other loadout, what they put in their primary hand, their offhand, what abilities they decide to choose. Even from that choice, that's almost like a pre-combat choice. And then in the middle of combat, now what do they want to do, right? Do they want to block it? Do they want to dodge? Do they want to parry? Do they want to use, into the fray, pulling the character towards them, pull of Aora that tosses them into the air, and then follow up with the fireball ability, right? Trying to kind of combine all these abilities, right? Like, I know we've spent a lot of time showing weapons, but it's not just about weapons, right? It's about mixing sort of all those things as well as your companion's combat abilities to just have a fun combat experience for the player.
I think Gabe did a wonderful job of just showing a little bit of some of the different combinations that players can enjoy. One of the really exciting things about the way Gabe and the team have constructed our classless ability system and both the spread of weapons and the spread of abilities is that there is so much room for players to define their own play style and, again, just express their character and their fantasy in this world. Because I feel like when you're building a role-playing game and you're creating all these different avenues of choice to the player, they all have to lead somewhere. And for us, it so often comes back to who do you want to be in this world? And, as Gabe mentioned, that's also expressed in, how do you kit yourself out? What kind of abilities do you choose? And also, like, just how do you approach challenges in combat? Like, are you someone who likes to just, like, charge in and start bulldozing everybody? Or are you someone who likes to approach, very tactically and very stealthily and, sort of pick your way through the most efficient version of the encounter?
What could you further explain that? I mean, the difference between the classes, the choices we'll have before, giving up everything and choosing the archer.
Yeah. So we are a game that takes place in the Pillars of Eternity world, right? So you can kind of expect that we referenced those games. We looked at those abilities, right? In terms of picking and choosing from the different classes that they have in those games, right? Like aspects of abilities that maybe pull from the fighter or the barbarian, or maybe pull from wizard, or maybe pull from the ranger, right? But just being able to kind of have a variety to let the player maybe go down that fantasy that maybe they experienced in Pillars, or maybe go a different route where they're, again, I love the shield and pistol, right? And maybe putting some points into things that make that specific experience more what I like to play. So yeah,
I love the pistol as well. I mean, we're gonna have gunfire here, so not just magic. I was so happy to see this at the latest gameplay. It's very, very good magic happening with gunfire and the shields and the enemies, and it's a lot of things happening, overwhelming in a good way experience. So it reminded of a lot of good things. Yeah, I'm with you guys.
You might have gunfire with magic. You might.
Yeah, you can mix up everything. Why not? Yeah, why not? So is there maybe any more mechanics or concepts you would like to dive in more that you have not been asked before about the exploration or combat itself?
We're really kind of trying to stick to the things that we showed, in the XCD. The highlights there were, that we have a dual wielding system, so I can put a shield in my offhand and a pistol or a sword or a wand. I can dual wield the wand. There's choice and consequence for that, where if I'm dual wielding with the wand, I can't block, so you're kind of maybe a little bit more defensiveless, lack defensing, and you need to maybe use dodge more. Or if I decide that I only want to just carry one wand, I can block and parry with it, right? Or if I want to supplement that with another weapon that allows me to block and parry, right? So really, we're just trying to show that, hey, here's our combat. Here's here's an example of a singular enemy, or maybe some archetypes that you might be facing, and kind of what are the mechanics in terms of, hey, power attack that breaks their block, or again, launching them into the air, or charging into into them, which can also break their block, and just letting the player know that there's these tools that they can come at these encounters in a variety of different ways.
And I think one thing you get a little bit of a sense of in watching some of the footage from XDD is that, besides having these, tactical combinations that Gabe is talking about that you can use, to greater effect in different circumstances, the team also really wanted to invest in giving each set of weapons like its own feel, So, again, you see pistols and wands, like they're both good mid-range weapons, but they feel very different. Like pistols feel a lot chunkier and heavier. Wands are really, really snappy and quick. And your one-handed melee weapons feel very different from like a big, heavy, like two-handed sword or hammer. And so part of the fantasy is not just, giving players good tactical options to sort of, min-max into, but also just giving them the fantasy and the feel of these different options and really letting them, as they're exploring the world and fighting through it, feel like the character they're playing.
Nice. That's the freedom we want to have in Avowed. I mean, so great to hear that. This next question I have here, maybe it's more for Carrie, but you feel free to answer in your own way. It's narrative wise. How will the choices of the player help shaping the story?
Well, I don't want to give too much away about the overarching story just yet, but as an Obsidian game, choice and consequence in stories and quests are really our bread and butter. And so, you're introduced into the conflict of the world relatively early on. And as you move forward through it, you increasingly see more sides of that conflict and more dimensions of it. And so, one thing that we certainly do with our quest design, and, I think if you're playing other RPGs, you can certainly see a lot of us devs like to do this is, you build these little quests and character interactions that are either a microcosm of the larger conflicts and themes you're exploring, or they're just showing different sides of it. And so I almost think of it as, little quizzes and tests before you really get to the final exam at the end of the game. So that by the time you get to the end of the game, you think, I really have my head around the different dimensions and characters in this conflict. I know what's going on in the world. And even if the decision isn't easy, I feel like I've been immersed in these conflicts long enough that I'm really bought into them. And, I have a feeling about the best way to move forward with this. And so as with our other games, we definitely look to our quests to help us, explore both, the big obvious questions, but also just some of the smaller characters who might be on the margins of those stories and kind of let players see the world in all its richness.
What you saw in that mission that we showed off was like a minor side thing, right? So it's like even in minor side quests, right, you're going to get some element of choice, whether you want to have a conflict or try to get around that conflict. But yeah.
My squad and I rested in the cave by the water last night, and as we were sleeping, we were ambushed by those miserable Zorips.
Guys, if we look at games like, we talked about this a little bit, but if we look at games like Grounded, Pentiment, Outer Worlds, and Pillars of Eternity, and why not Skyrim from Bethesda, from our friends at Bethesda, you could say that they have, of course, different scopes, different scales, systems, and ways of being played. All right. So, and people sometimes tend to compare, this is the new Skyrim, this is Avowed, this is Outer Worlds. So each one is a project. All right. Each one is a game. So how did this learning with those games, I mean, your games, Grounded, Pentiment, Outer Worlds, and Pillars of Eternity, how did this learning help you guys build up Avowed?
Yeah, I think, for us, again, just looking at the structure and the scope of the Outer Worlds, and that also being a project that we made in Unreal, that gave us a good foundation in the engine and also a good understanding of, the model and the scope that we could approach for, a game like this. And then obviously taking the Pillars of Eternity IP and translating the world and the characters and the combat and itemization into that. It's certainly not an easy thing to do, but, when you have a precedent, you can kind of put those things together a bit more easily. But I think for us, because you're right, there are a million ways to, build an RPG, build a fantasy RPG, so many different things you can really focus on. I think we've really found that where we shine the most is in creating an experience that gives the player plenty of room to discover and explore, but is still curated. And so we know what we're doing with the space, we know what we're doing with the player's time, and we have a really good grasp around, the breadth of quests and characters and adventures that the player can embark on.
Yeah, at Obsidian, right, our mantra, our motto for the studio is your world, your way, right? So you referenced many games that we've made that are all completely different.
Yeah.
But they all sort of have a core element to them, which is your world your way, whether that's you solving it, a set of murders in the way that you want to, or you sort of going and building and grounded building the world that you're going to be playing in with these tools, right? Like on Avowed, we've sort of tried to lean towards a lot of the conversations and the story and how you evolve that as the player, but also really from the pre kind of combat choices you make to the moment to moment combat choices you make, just in giving the player the choice to play the way that they want to, your world your way. So yeah.
I know I have just one last question here, guys. You just foresaw almost all my questions here. So I know this is a tricky question for some people, but the players love to know how much time they will spend with upcoming games, because we have like a lot of games. If in the past, in the 90s, we had like, I don't know, 3 or 5 games a month. Now we have 3 or 5 games a day, or in a week. Yeah. So we have a lot of games to play, a lot of choices to make. And is there an average you imagine for Avowed? How long do you think the game will be for someone doing, the main missions and the ones that love to do the side stuff?
So it's hard to pin that down to a real specific number because, as you mentioned, your play style, difficulty, how completionist are you is going to impact that a lot. But I'd say players who are familiar with the Outer Worlds, you're going to encounter a comparable scope to what you found in the Outer Worlds.
Nice.
Yeah, I would say, we're a pretty streamlined RPG game, but it really is the player's choice. Like, we make it very clear. This is the main quest. This is a side quest. So it's kind of up to the player in terms of how long they want to stay in the world, how much they want to invest themselves in the lore, and sort of like kind of reading those little elements, those tidbits that we maybe drop throughout the world. So I do think it's such a wide range of time frames that it's hard to really nail down, because a player might just get so invested in it that they'll want to stay in there for a lot longer than another player. So yeah.
Yeah, we talked about everything, narrative, gameplay, the scope, the structure. Is there any final considerations, anything you want to add before we end our conversation here?
So I'm really excited for players to get to experience Avowed for themselves, build their own player character. I always love seeing what kinds of skills and weapons players spec into and how they like to play. So I'm excited to see players start to engage with the game and define their own character in the Living Lands.
Yep. Super excited for players to start seeing it. Super excited to just hear players, feedback, right? What you all saw was an alpha build, right? So there's only room for improvement as we kind of move throughout the year, and just keep trying to and just nailing this thing down and getting it to you fall 2024.
Nice. We are looking forward to playing the game, and guys, we wish you the best. All right. Have a great time developing the game. I know you are with a lot of demands out there, I can imagine. So good luck on that quest of yours, and we wish you the best, and we are really looking forward to playing the game in its final version when it comes out. All right. Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.